let's work with our web service. The first thing you want to do is set up a virtual directory. You could follow the instructions I gave you earlier where you're creating an alias in the web section to a folder. We'll just call it test for now. You might want to call it my web service 1 to follow along on your root drive there. And then in your projects, if you set it up like I did, our web services and then a particular folder, or just our web services. If you're going to copy the folder that you have in your web directory, web service, you can copy all these files or just drag this whole web service folder to this folder before you do this, and then you're all set up. These are just examples that I was doing on something else, but you get the idea. Then you create your virtual directory there, and then you're going to give the ability to run scripts, browse if you want to. And then when you look at this, you're going to see that you have an application set. You might see it that it's actually not there where you need to create it. Then you want to create it. And you also want to give your script's execution permission. And that's about it. That's all you really need. And you can always change your local path as you need to. You can also do it within the www root within CINET pub as usual and create a virtual directory after you copy those files. But you're going to need those files. And once you do that, then you're going to either want to copy these files, or you can actually go into Visual Studio and create a whole new project. File, new project, and you're just going to create a web service. As you can see, ASP.NET web service, and that's going to create an empty project for you, so you can do it that way. A little bit of work and then it's empty. It has stuff in there, but it's blank and they're not really used. You can just close the solution and then overwrite them if you want to. And that could be very helpful to get that started. We'll go back to My Web Services and we'll take a look at what we have here. Well, it's already in place. Note that when you work on your service, you're not going to see anything here. You can view all the files here. And that's going to allow you to take a look at the code behind that CS file. And then you can view the code. And that's going to allow you to see that you have a lot of things going on. We're working with data, so we need these two. We're also doing the web and web services, so we would want these two. And everything else depends on what you need to work with. Working in Visual Studio, you're going to get a lot of information like you would with ASP.NET, and also working with WinForm, so it does do work for you. We'll just take a look at what's going on. Well, the first thing you're going to do when you have a web service, you have a namespace, right? And then you're going to have your class. Above your class, you're going to open with a bracket here. And you're going to put web service. And then you're going to give your namespace. If you don't do this, it'll still work, but you need to give it a namespace for the URL that's going to make things unique for this particular web service when it's going online. So you're going to want to specify something. Right now we're just specifying the local host, and you can do it this way. That's going to be fine. And you also want to give a description. And that's going to be in between these brackets. Just note the syntax here. The parentheses as well after web service and then namespace. Namespace and description. Just going to describe your web service. We then have a class as usual deriving from system.webservices.webservice. A constructor if you need to do anything, but for the most part you're going to be creating your web methods. Same thing. It's just a method here that says say hello, and this is actually one of our functions from our web service. It's a method returning a string, just saying hello. When you call it, invoke it, no parameters are passed, and you just say hello. So that's going to be a web method there. And that needs to be put here. You can see that we're going to have a cache duration of 30 minutes. You can do that if you want. So it won't be refreshing itself for 30 minutes, as you can see. Now the description here as well, this is important. This is just going to give a description so people know how your particular method's going to function, what it's going to do. The service is for the service, and then you group things together using some sort of logic to decide how to place things together in one web service. So you do that for each of your web methods, each of your methods where you're going to actually do something. Here we're just saying hello, we're adding two numbers together, getting an int, passing back an int, returning a plus b. Here we're subtracting the second from the first, returning a minus b as an integer, and then we still give our cache, how long we want the cache to go, and the description, very important to do that. And then the web method for the last one. This was already talked about in the database section. You want to take a look at that video, And you can also look at the ADO.NET project in that ADO.NET folder, and you can see what's going on with that particular example to see more about databases. Here we're just grabbing from the pubs database in the SQL Server. If you have that installed, you can download the trial from Microsoft, Microsoft.com, get the SQL Server trial, and you can install it. And that's going to allow you to get that pubs database, and we're just going to take from the authors. Pubs is just like a trial database, just a sample database. And I explain all of this, how this works, where you get a connection, open the connection. Connection is going to have your connection string here as normal. You can see the other video for more information on that. We get a connection, a command via the SQL command object class there. Then we're going to set our connection for our command to our connection, pass the SQL string to the command, and then we're going to execute scalar in this circumstance because we want to actually just return the first value here, just the first column of the first row. We know it's a long, but we're going to type convert it into an int and have a count, and then we return the count. So we can get the count of the authors based on the parameter that we pass, which is the state abbreviation code, as you can see. So hopefully that's very clear. Your method as usual, public access, return type, method name, and your parameters. That's your signature. And this is just telling you what the duration is going to be for the cache and the description, but both very important. And then your implementation, what you're going to do. The last one is going to return XML. And we talked about this as well. Just doing some SQL database work, and we're getting that same string state abbreviation, and we're returning a data set this time, which is going to be XML.